Today I'd like to continue with and conclude the Lojong teachings on Bodhicitta. Third point of the 7 points of mindfulness training, of mind training, how to transcend and transform adverse, difficult conditions. How to make difficult things and hardships, opposition, into the pathway of awakening. The final consideration, which is very central to relative Bodhicitta, is how to deal with troublemakers. Troublemakers. These are people, they're beings who give you a hard time. They seem to hurt you, push you down, disempower you, take away your liberty, take away your property, harm your livelihood. In all ways, these are people who make it difficult for you. And in extreme cases, they cause great harm, death, imprisonment. And when we're learning Bodhicitta, it's very important to learn and to act in compassion for even troublemakers. Troublemakers, enemies, opponents, difficult people, difficult institutions. Sometimes you incarnate in a world that seems to be against you. The universe is against you. Everything. Where's the trouble? Who's causing me the trouble? Sometimes people get angry at God and say, God, you're the troublemaker. So we have to see right. We have to see clearly how to deal with what we perceive as troublemakers. There was a student of my teacher, Japanese woman named Yukiko. And she, growing up, she was learning the Japanese tea ceremony. And it was a very Zen practice for her. And she had a teacher as a tea master. And the tea master, they did a beautiful tea ceremony together. And it was very beautiful and serene. And then afterwards, Yukiko said, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And she said, yes. And she said, life is very simple, very beautiful. Life is very simple. And Yukiko was like, oh, I see, just from having tea, life is so simple, so beautiful. And then the tea master said, people are the problem. She's like, life is beautiful and simple, people are difficult. That's the hard thing. Not life, but people. And so the tea master had that experience. Now we have an old American saying, and by old for American standards, I think 1984. That's old for America. An apple a day keeps a troublemaker away. And that's if you could just throw the apple really hard. Just kidding. So, as Buddhists, We never, ever want to harm a troublemaker. They might cause the most trouble. They might take everything you got, torture you, kill the people you love, and then kill you. And we never want to hurt them. So we don't seek to hurt any troublemaker. There's never a cause to hurt the troublemaker. Never harm the person who harms. You have to go into the Dharma. We seek to make an enemy an ally. Just like clownfish. They make allies out of their anemones. So, really, we seek to create a truce or a better reciprocity, a good relationship with troublemakers. So I knew a guy in middle school. He was bullied and bothered by this one troublemaker. And every day for like 2 years, the last 2 years, he took his lunch money. And this guy was like all sad. And actually, you know, many years later, to this day, he still takes his lunch money. What a bully, what a troublemaker. But he's a lot more polite. And he asks, do you want fries with that order? Lunch money. So we seek to have a positive interaction with everyone. Good people, bad people. We seek to bring enlightenment to everyone. And if we can enlighten the troublemaker, then there's no more trouble. That's the point of all of this. Not to, you did something wrong, so now I'm going to do something equal back. But if you did something wrong, then grow and learn. And then you won't do anything wrong again. You have to be more like a parent than an enemy. You know, a parent says, oh, my child made a mistake, broke something, cost me something, you know, did all this mess. But I love my child and I'm going to teach my child so that my child doesn't do it again, so that they learn. This is what a bodhisattva does. This is what we aspire to in the practice of compassion. So it's very important. When we're being hurt by a troublemaker, we have to practice Bodhicitta. We have to have compassion. Yes, when someone's hurting us, we want to get out of the hurt. We want to, you know, like get out of being hurt, get out of the loss, get out of what's causing us pain. Of course we do. And that's important. It's very important. We have to be very, very powerful, very strong, and like get out of places where we lose energy, where we're getting hurt, or where we're being pushed down. And we have to get to places of elevation, empowerment, where we're strong. But we don't do that we don't get strong by hurting the person who causes us trouble. If you do that, you're stuck. So we care for the troublemaker. This is a very powerful teaching of compassion. Someone's causing us trouble, hurting us, taking away from us. And we have to care for them. You have to. Otherwise, there's no way out. You're stuck in the yin yang of the ups and downs. Compassion transcends that. So when someone causes you trouble, you see someone, you're like, that person hurt me. I'm mad at that person. I'm mad at this institution, this country, this universe. You need to have compassion. You need to care about the troublemaker. So, caring about the troublemaker. Just a simple thing about Buddhism. We seek, in dealing with troublemakers, we seek a win-win situation. So someone wants to hurt you or someone is hurting you, you want to get out of the pain, but you also care about that person who's hurting you. And if you do that, you're going to find yourself in a much more powerful swim lane. You're going to find yourself in a much more powerful attention. If you just want to get back at the person who's hurting you, then you're stuck in karma. Compassion leads you out. So, compassion for the person, care for the person who's hurting you. Look for a win-win. I guarantee in every situation in Maya and Samsara and the universe, where there is hate, where there is oppression, where there's a troublemaker, there's a way of Dharma that leads to a win-win. It's true. So we seek a win-win. Now let's just get real about it. Let's say you're walking down a street and there's a mother who's not observing social distancing. And let's say this mother grabs you, pulls you into an alley and pulls out a knife. And this mother's intention is to kill you and take your money. Now, I would call that a troublemaker. They want to take what's valuable to you, and they want to take your liberty and your life. So how do you find a win-win there? I do, and I have. And this is, I have Jiu-Jitsu. And with Jiu-Jitsu, someone can attack me with bad intentions. They could be a troublemaker with the worst intentions. They want to kill me. They want to take everything from me. And with my skillful means, I have an ability. I've trained and I've had discipline to be able to defend myself. So someone with a knife tries to attack me, I can stop them from harming me. Now my intent is, yeah, I don't want to be harmed, but I also don't want them to get the bad karma for harming me. However, I can also put them down and stop the trouble. There's no problem. So I don't hurt them. I don't have to, like, they pull a knife on me, I pull a gun on them. I don't have to do that. I develop myself and my skills. So I'm teaching you compassionate Jiu-Jitsu. Now, many of my students have black belts in Jiu-Jitsu. So they know physically what I'm saying is true. But you don't have to know physical Jiu-Jitsu. You can understand this. So someone who wants to kill you with bad intent, they're a troublemaker, they have the worst things in mind for you. If you have strong skills in Jiu-Jitsu and in compassion, you don't want them to be hurt. This person is troubled. They're off. You have to be strong, but you don't have to hurt that person because you care for them. They want to kill you, but you care for them. You don't want to kill them. You want to put them down so that there's no problem anymore. That's compassion. I don't want to get hurt, but I don't want to hurt the person who wants to hurt me. I want to help the person that hurts me. So win-win in a knife fight is that person with bad intentions, you're able to stop them from hurting you, and you don't have to kill them or hurt them. They come in with the knife and they're on the ground. Now, I've lived this and I've done this. So I'm living proof. You know, this is something I don't say very often, but I've been attacked 11 times with a knife. Well, I tell black belts this, but I don't tell everyone this. I've been attacked 11 times with a knife. And guess what? I've been a martial artist for many years. And my martial arts has helped me. And I haven't hurt anyone who attacked me. I didn't have to kill them, pull out a gun and shoot them. I used martial arts. I'm coming from an authentic place of truth. And even before, even before my strong Buddhist training, I had a martial arts training that was a training of compassion. Like, you don't have to hurt people. You can defend yourself. You don't have to hurt people. So we seek a win-win, and even if someone has bad intentions, tries to hurt you, we have a higher way, a way of compassion, where we're not hurt, but we're powerful. See, this is what our study is about. You have to become powerful. Powerful in many dimensions to deal with life and deal with everything that's going on. Because everything that's going on is intense. And when you're powerful and you're capable of dealing with all these things, then you're going to be balanced. If you're not powerful, you struggle. You have hardship. So win-win is what we seek. Now, most people don't do this. They follow karmas and they get very stuck. So we can see right now across our country, America, people are having a lot of hardships. There's many people who are, doing positive protests, but then there's a lot of people who bubble over and they fight, and they're faced with hardship and negativity and hate, and then they reflect that hate. And the peaceful protesters, which is the majority, they have to stay on the peaceful side, which is good, right? But the part that comes out on the fringes that people see and get all upset about is these bad protesters who do the looting, who burn the buildings. And these protesters, they're falling into that thing. They've experienced hate. And they're angry. And so they're expressing hate. Now, in one way, we can understand it, not accept it. We can understand it. People are hurt. and they're trying to express themselves, hurting back. So we can have compassion for them, but they're immature. We should not react this way, but we understand when toddlers or young people act in a way where they just don't know yet. They haven't figured it out. So we understand their suffering, but it's not the right way. It's not the enlightened way. Because looting and burning buildings, this is not win-win. This is, I got a loss, and so I'm gonna give a loss. Instead of win-win, it's loss-loss. So we wanna seek a win-win. But I understand, I understand for real, like how people feel. People see, that things are hurting them, and they're trying to react in the ways that they have the capacity for. And we have the capacity for compassion, for a very, very, very elevated awareness of compassion. But a lot of people don't have these teachings. And a lot of people are in very different states of karma. So, this country, people are getting like woken up. They're getting woke to what's going on. And like a lot of people are seeing, like things that create, tremendous upheaval in a being, in a group of beings, in the whole country, in the awareness of the world is what's going down here. But if we face the greatest suffering with self-anger, then we're not transcending it. Buddhists have been very good at transcending violence and anger. And they've been beacons of hope and direction for people who suffer. It's because when someone hurts us, we don't try to fight back. We try to find peace. So when things are difficult and hard, we look for peace. If someone hurts you with hate, it's very simple to try to respond with hate. But hate doesn't stop hate, it just creates more hate. So Satya Sai Baba, he had this teaching. He was like, if someone is hurting you, if they're mean, if they're a troublemaker, it's like them standing in the gutter. I don't know. I saw a raccoon in the gutter recently. It was all like, hi. And he's like, so if a troublemaker is in the gutter and they throw something at you and hurt you, if you go into the gutter to confront them, you find yourself in the gutter. If someone expresses hate against you and you experience the pain and suffering of that, if you go into hate against them, you come down to the level of hate. So if someone hates you, you love them. You have compassion for them. You have active compassion for them. It's what we have to do. Otherwise, we're just going to end up in the karmas of everybody else, of the whole world. Everyone hates this, likes this, doesn't like this. Compassion transcends hate. And compassion forgives, and compassion looks for a deeper meaning, even if you're harmed. So it's very important. This is what we must do. Now, there's a Lojong teaching. When you have a troublemaker, you have to see that that troublemaker is suffering. You have to understand their suffering. They're bad, they're wrong, they're hurting you, and they're causing trouble. You have to see that that person has some, where's their suffering? Because the reason they're hurting you is because they have some hurt themselves. So we, as Buddhists, practitioners of compassion yoga, we have to say, this person's hurting me. This system's hurting me. This government's hurting me, or whatever. And we have to look for, where's the pain for them? What's their suffering? Why are they acting this way? And then we're able to have compassion for where they're coming from. This is very important. And then when we have compassion for them, then there's a way of creating change. But if we're just in reaction to them who's hurting us, the man, whatever is happening to us, if we're just in reaction, we're in karma. Only compassion and love bring you out of it. So you have to say, something's hurting me. What do I do about it? You have to start asking the why questions. Why? Why is this person doing this? Why? Buddha talked about an incarnation that he had when he was he was incarnated in a hell realm before his enlightenment, but he had done something and he was in hell, and there was a demon, god, devil kind of person who was in charge of him. He was like mean, and eventually Buddha was just hurt by this person over and over, this being. And then eventually he had compassion for him. And his compassion for him is what transcended hell. Buddha was able to come out of hell. But he was also able to have an effect on that hell being, that demonic overlord. And through that compassion, he was able to draw him out. And he became an arhat of Buddha in India eventually. So we can't be angry even at the devil. You have to have compassion for the devil. If you have compassion for the devil, you get out of hell and you'll transform the devil. The devil will see the Dharma. So we can't get stuck on hate. When there's hate that comes towards us, we have to have compassion. We have to transcend the hate. It's very important. This is the practice of Bodhicitta, the practice of compassion. It's a discipline, and it's a game-changing way of looking at life. So if you're hurt, wake up. Don't be hurt. When Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, there was a really tough time. A lot of people were angry, very upset. And Bobby Kennedy was talking to Cecil Howard, a Black activist who marched with Martin Luther King. And Cecil Howard was angry. He was like, Martin Luther King was fighting for the rights, African Americans, and then a white man killed him. And Bobby Kennedy was talking to him, and Bobby Kennedy is like, you know, I totally understand. I feel your pain. I know where you're coming from. And then Cecil Howard's like, no, you don't. He's like, this is something, you know, you Boston white guy, New England, right? It's like, how can you understand? And then Bobby Kennedy says, a white man also killed my brother. No. So then Cecil Howard's like, but it's totally different. But then he got past it. And he was like, oh, it's not about race. It's about loss. You know, if we get into the different dichotomies of things, we see all sorts of separations. But, you know, and Bobby Kennedy was not being a jerk or missing the point. He had a point to make. And Cecil Howard understood it. And he was like, And it changed the way that he was an activist. He stopped being so angry and he started seeing a bigger picture. So in the Lojong teachings, we have a very, very powerful teaching, a very important teaching. It is, we accept all loss and we give all victory. Accept all loss, give all victory. So consider the people that you have trouble with, hardship with, difficulties with, or maybe in the past, or maybe now. And consider this teaching, accept all loss and give all victory. Is that bad? No, it's not. People are so defensive. Like the automatic thing that you do is you're like, I'm defensive. Someone says, I don't like the way that is. And you go, no, it's good. According to your belief system. That's something you like, they say it's wrong. And you go, no, it's right. And it's just based on your karma, your belief systems. Or someone says, I don't like you. And you go, I don't like you. People are so self-defensive. Let that go. Let go of that self-defensiveness and have a higher way. Let people, Buddha said this, people have criticized people, have been angry at people from time immemorial. You can't get out of it. It happens. But what you can do is you can practice the Dharma, which is beyond the opinion of other people. So when someone says, I don't like you, I'm mad at you, you did wrong, don't go into self-defense mode. In fact, accept it. Accept what they say. That's where they're at. That's a truth of where they're at. So take it. Because once you stop self-defending, start pushing back against it, then you can start to see something. And which is the way to create a solution. But if somebody pushes against you and you push back, then you're caught in yin and yang, in karma and samsara. But when someone pushes you and you let it down, this is Jiu-Jitsu. That means that there's no fight, no force, and there's a de-escalation and a way out of confrontation, a way out of harm. But I'm teaching you these teachings because you've got to be skilled in Bodhicitta to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be like, oh, something's a problem, so I'm going to go blah, explode. That's where you're going to create. You're going to become the troublemaker. You're going to hurt other people. So I'm teaching you how to accept other people's suffering, accept other people's blaming, accept their anger. You have to, like as a Jiu-Jitsu sensei, I can accept a punch to the face with Jiu-Jitsu because I've got skills. So when you have Bodhicitta, someone could say the meanest thing to you. Someone could hurt you in real life. And you can have Bodhicitta. Powerful skills instead of self-reaction. It's very important. This is what we practice. And we don't just talk about it. We have to do it. It's not just an idea. It's a way of life. It's a way of being. And if you do that, things work. Things are high. Things are very powerful. Even in the face of the most difficult things, you have to be able to accept it. So there's a story of a Buddhist monk. He's meditating in a cave. His enlightened master sends him to a cave, and he's sitting there meditating. Now, for some reason, this horrible demon appears, and while he's meditating, the demon attacks him, and the demon scratches him, and he's got these burning, like deep scratches from the demon claws, and the monk is struggling with this. He's like, I'm supposed to be here to attain something or get what my master taught me, and then there's this demon messing with me. So he's having this hard time. So he's afraid, so he runs back to his master. And master says, I understand. And he goes, here's a mantra. And this mantra, you can fight back against the demon with this mantra. It's a powerful mantra, and it will give it to that demon. So he goes back, and he's meditating, and the demon comes and scratches him again. And then he starts doing the mantra. And so the demon scratches him, and he does the mantra, scratch, mantra, scratch, mantra. And then he just does that for a while. And he's having this hard time. And there's this scary demon who wants to hurt him, and he's got this one mantra to help. And then he goes back to his master, and he goes, this mantra's not working. Like, it hurts the demon, but then the demon also hurts me. And then the master says, maybe you gotta stop fighting the demon. And so he considers that very deeply, goes back up, the demon comes over to him again, scratches him while he's meditating, and then he has an insight, and he says, he's like, demon, I'm incarnate. I'm unenlightened. And for some reason, I'm here and you're here. There's some karma. I'm here, you're here, you're doing what you do, and I'm trying to deal with you. And there's some karma here. Maybe I've done something to you in a past life. Why do you see me? Why do you attack me? Why do you hurt me? There's got to be something. There's something about karma, obviously. And so this monk resolves to be compassionate. And the monk says, I won't fight you anymore. And I'm going to give you what you want. You're hurting my physical body, so I'm going to give you my physical body. Whatever you want, if you want to eat my flesh, I give it to you. And so the monk gives this long talk before the demon of, I probably bothered you somehow or something, and and there's some karma that I have while you're here, and I'm going to give you myself, my body. You can just eat me, you can do whatever, right? And then through this whole talk, there's so much dharma and selflessness and compassion that the demon becomes very uninterested. He's like, oh, we used to be in a fight, but there's just too much light. And the demon's like, I'm leaving. So even with an evil demon who appears out of nowhere and attacks you, if you have compassion, I guarantee the demon will leave. Yeah, another place where I saw a beautiful example of taking loss and giving victory was it's something I heard on the radio as well. So in Boston, all these protesters came up to police headquarters, right? And this is in a country where sometimes we're mad at the police, so we like burn down police headquarters. So this big congregation of protesters come to the police headquarters in Boston, and they're yelling and shouting. And so what do the police do? They put up fences and they bring out the riot police, right? You know, they got all the helmets and shields and, you know, sticks and everything. And they come in and they're like, ah, everyone's mad. And then the police, instead of fighting back, tear gas or something like that, the police were like, we're gonna take a knee. So they just, I think one started and then the others followed. And then they just, where there's this conflict, the police said, we're gonna take a loss. And they took a knee. And then the protesters were like, oh, then it's nonviolent. And they didn't fight, and they felt supported. They felt positive. So this is how we disarm hate. By understanding the suffering of other people, and then taking an action to de-escalate things. And then instead of a fight, we're kind of on the same level. This is what we have to do. When you take a loss, see, when you give all loss to the troublemaker, sorry, you take all loss from the troublemaker. You give all victory to the troublemaker, and you take all loss. That's something that's it's very powerful. It ends up being strong for you. You end up being strong because of it. You end up being strong because you've taken the loss and given the victory. It doesn't mean that you're weakened or something's taken away from you. You end up being stronger. Because what do you lose? You lose your ego, and you lose your self that wants to react back. You lose the attention of self that makes things look like you need to fight. So you lose self and ego and reaction and negativity. And when you lose all that, then you are strong. Then that's when your power comes out. That's when you're capable of amazing things. So, just yesterday, the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Bottoms, she comes out and she says, the government has failed the people. And she said, and my government, this local city government, has failed the people. And she goes, and I'm committed to change, but overall, the whole government of this country failed the people. So she says, I'm gonna protest. And she's like, she's like, I'm gonna protest. I'm gonna lead the protest. So she got this giant group of people together, the mayor leading the protest against the government, which she's part of. So she accepted loss in the face of this opposition and difficulty. But her loss didn't diminish her. It brought her up. Keisha Bottoms, she went from the bottom to the top. So, just reaching. So when we're looking at loss, we don't lose. Even if you lose, you win. When you come from this loss, this humble place to create peace, this humble place that creates compassion. And when we have compassion for the troublemakers, it unlocks great power. But what Mayor Bottoms did, it unlocks a lot of power. It changes things. So when you can take a troublemaker and bring to that troublemaker like compassion, then you're on a whole different level. You're not just force against force. You're a whole different system dealing with a difficulty, but it expands and creates a higher consciousness. And that higher consciousness has a much greater power. There was a teaching from The Art of War. A general back in the spring and autumn period in China when there was a lot of wars going on, but a lot of students of The Art of War, the Taoist generals. There was a great general named Li Shun. And Li Shun had a very strong practice from studying the art of war in Taoism. It was in the first chapter of strategic assessment, laying plans, planning out if there's going to be a battle, a war, planning it. And he took the first teaching, which is the way. So according to the art of war, when you're planning to see how to win a battle, you consider first the way, then the weather, then the terrain, then the leadership, and then the discipline. Those 5 considerations are the 5 considerations that tell you whether you can win or lose. So he got to look at the way. So he's like, the way. And the way's the first consideration. If you're righteous, if you're coming from a place of Dharma, you have tremendous power. There's a power that comes from it. Now, if you're unrighteous, even if you're very powerful and have lots of weapons and men and things like that, you'll eventually fall. It eventually happens. It will change. But if you have Dharma, there's a great power. And this is a very fundamental teaching in the art of war, that if you have the way, eventually you will win. So he cultivated the way. The way. The way of truth. The way of Dharma. If your country is being attacked and everyone's united in the Dharma, they'll be able to push off the attack. And so he really, really focused on this. So he, as his point of the way, believed in life. He's like, I'm a general and I have an army and I have to face, some difficult opponents, but how can I do it where I don't lose life? I don't want to lose my men, and I don't want to kill the enemy. So what do I do? That was his meditation in facing his enemies. So whenever he would fight in the battles, he would always be on defense. He would never push his men to a point where someone could be killed. He wouldn't take advantage, even if it meant that people would be killed or injured. And also, he had to focus on capturing his enemy. He never tried to win in battle. He always created ideas of capturing the enemy. And he was a great general. So there was this one time where he was marching his army, somewhere, and they were going. To get to where they were going, they had to go through this valley, and he recognized that he didn't know where the enemy was, but if the enemy was at that valley, it would be the perfect place for an ambush, because the way the weather, the terrain there was, if he's walking through that valley and the armies and the opponent army was on the sides, they would totally win. So he laid plans for if they were there. And if they were there, it was plans consistent with his belief in the way. So he's marching his army through the valley, and then sure enough, the enemy general was waiting in ambush with his armies on the mountainsides, right there. And as soon as they got fully into the valley, the enemy general launches all of his troops. They're running down the mountains. And in the art of war, they say, if you're down the mountain and someone's attacking from up, that's a very bad situation. So his plan went, once they recognized that they were being ambushed, the plan went into action, his plans. And his plans were this. 95% of his troops ran away, they retreated. And he had these battle carts. They were these carts that were enclosed, made out of wood, and some holes where you can shoot bow and arrow. It's kind of like a ancient Chinese tank or something like that. And so the general saw when they started to attack that Li Shun went into one of those tanks, and they had maybe 100 of them. And so they got surrounded by the enemy army. No escape. 95% of Li Shun's army ran away. And then the whole army of the enemy was surrounding these few tanks. And then the general of the enemy army walks over to Li Shun, and he's like, I got you. He's like, you're surrounded. We're going to eventually be able to break into all of these, and you're done. And then Li Shun says, I will accept your surrender. And he goes, what do you mean? So his army that ran away, they ran away down the valley, and then they came back up around to the ambush point that the other enemy had. And then he was like, look, now you're the ambushed one. And then the opponent general gave up. So that's great. I love these stories of where people have used the art of war and its intention, which is to have compassion, to end conflict. And we can do this in all of our conflicts as well, with people, with life. We can end conflict instead of force against force. Instead of fighting, we can outmaneuver. That's what Buddhism and Taoism teaches us. How to have compassion, how to get out of conflict in a way that doesn't hurt the other person and benefits us. We can be empowered that way. But there's a great power that comes from compassion. Because if Li Shan just decided we're going to fight, there would have been a fight. There would have been a lot of deaths. But there's a greater power that emerges from how am I going to win this without hurting someone? This is what we have to consider in all of our conflicts with people and places and things and stuff and everything in the universe. We have to say, how do I solve this in a way of compassion? And then once you figure it out, it will express tremendous power. Just going into someone's fighting me, so I have to fight back. It's low energy, low attention, physical self. But when you say, what's the high way? What's the compassion way? What would Bodhisattva do? Then there's something that comes out of it that's much, much higher, much brighter. When we have a troublemaker, they're not, the way that we handle it is that we have to see that it advances us. Someone gives us a real bad trouble, something that hurts us, something that's difficult. We can't sit there and go, I'm hurt, I'm a victim, and I feel bad, and now I'm gonna fight back. No, we have to say, this is a challenge for me to go to a higher Dharma and solve this, not in hate, but in a higher truth. So Li Shan, he had something that he said, a testament of his success. He said, I appreciate my opponent because my opponent makes me, motivates me to find the fastest way to solve conflict. And so Li Shan noticed that for every challenge and every hardship, it made him think of a higher way than he would have normally experienced. So he took hardship and difficulty as a practice of compassion, a practice of harmlessness. It made him better because it was more difficult. I had a student, she got she was working at a contract. She was there for a few years, or she was training or working for a few years. She wasn't an expert in the technology that she was working on. And she was at a company where a coworker who was more of an expert, in all of the meetings that they were in, he would kind of attack her and try to throw her under the bus and give her a hard time and point out that she was doing bad, things like that. And instead of getting angry at him, she said, okay, so he's mean and stuff like that, but he's right in a certain way that and he's extra mean, but maybe he's 80% too mean, but he's 20% right. And I better work on these technologies so I'm strong, so he can't point that out anymore. And then so she worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, put in extra hours, and took what he said in his mean criticism, and she found what's constructive in it. And she became a much stronger programmer because of it. And then she got a promotion because that mean person who was trying to hurt her actually was an inspiration for her to work harder and to become more powerful and impeccable. And even though he had his bad attitude never ended, but others could see that she became strong. And her manager ended up giving her a promotion. So we have to see that the people who give us a hard time are not enemies. No one's an enemy. Someone who's an enemy is deserving of greater compassion. And we have to see that a troublemaker or an enemy for us is a lesson. It shows us something of our own mind. I always like to talk about this group of monks in the time of the Buddha. He had these monks who a lot of Buddhist monks had trouble with. They even called them, there was these 6 monks, and they called them the Gang of 6. I like it because it's called a gang. And the Gang of 6 were these Buddhist monks, and they were studying with Buddha for a long time. And then all of a sudden they got together and they started giving people a hard time. They started going over to monks and yelling at them and being mean and doing all sorts of things. They had so many shenanigans. And then, so they would come over, yell at some monk and tell him all sorts of mean things. And then the monk would be all upset and would go to Buddha, say, Buddha, the Gang of 6 came over to me and they did this and hurt me this way and said this thing to me. So they're mean, right? And what are we going to do about them? And Buddha never corrected them. Buddha always taught the person who was hurt and upset by what they did how to have compassion and seeing truth beyond the transient experience that caused them suffering. So someone who gives you a hard time, someone who hurts you even, is not an enemy. Buddha never said, I'm going to get revenge on them. I'm going to give them justice. No, I don't remember any teaching where he corrected them, but there was a lot of complaints about them. And Buddha never said, you're right, you complainer. They did that and you should go and kick them or something. He always taught someone how to have acceptance and compassion and understanding and a bigger perspective and a deeper awareness of truth. And then many, many people learned from the Gang of 6. You know, during Buddha's lifetime, there were 3 attempts on his life. There were people who did not like him, different religious groups, different individuals who during his life tried to kill him. So Buddha didn't organize his big posse of Buddhist monks to go and beat up the other spiritual gang, right? So he never ever fought back. When hate was, projected towards him, negativity, even people trying to kill him, he always solved it with Dharma. He was never angry. He never tried to get revenge. He solved even an attempt on his life with compassion. So you have to consider everything that happens to you when you see a troublemaker as a spiritual lesson. How can you look at it in a way of developing your spirit? Because every troublemaker and every negative thing that can happen to you is a test. It's a spiritual test. Are you going to be enlightened and deal with it in a way that brings wisdom for you, compassion for the other? Or are you going to go into reaction, anger, karma, hate, gutter, and be in a negative place in awareness. You got to see the troublemakers as a teacher in that regard. There's this great story from Taoism, a Taoist story in China. So this young man learns about Taoism, reads the teachings of Master Chin, and Master Chin, he travels to the city where there's the Master Chin's monastery, and he goes into the monastery, becomes a Taoist monk. Now, Master Chin, there's many drawings of him. He had long hair and big beard, and he wore this big hat and beautiful robes. But he taught monks. He had a monastery, a monastic group. And so he gets to the monastery. He wants to see this beautiful, fancy, Taoist master. And he gets there and they go, oh, Master Chin has been in, meditation retreat by himself for 4 years. So we don't know when he's going to come out. But he goes, okay, well, I just want to be in his monastery and learn his teachings. So Master Chin there's this big monastery, and Master Chin is in this pagoda, like this big temple. And he's just like, he's in there, just meditating away. Like, it's probably just like in samadhi, just sitting there the whole time, merged with the Tao. And so we get all of his good energy here. And everyone's like, yay. And so the monastery, the monastic life is going on really well. Except there's this one, he's one of the older monks. And he's like this jaded monk. Like when the young man joins, he comes in with some new monks, and this older monk comes over and looks at them and goes, you're never gonna make it. Never gonna learn anything here. And just is negative and mean. And then he continues, they go in for chanting. So they're sitting there and they're doing Taoist chanting. And then this guy comes in, sits down, and then he just starts screaming obscenities. They're all saying oh, I want to be enlightened, and enlightenment is good, and compassion, and blah, blah, blah. They're saying, they're reading the things and saying all these good, happy things about the Dharma. And then this one guy, he's all like, F this, F that. He's just saying all this negative stuff. And then they're like, wow, this guy's a mess. And then this guy gets even worse. So they're doing sitting meditation. And you know what he does? He gets a little needle. And he goes around, sneaking around while people are meditating. And he pokes people with a needle. And they're meditating, peace of mind. And then they're all, ouch! And then when they sit again, then they're all, is he going to sneak up on me? So keep doing that. And what else did he do? Oh, the other thing, he looked drunk most of the time. He was walking around with a gourd filled with rice wine, and then he would pass out, fall asleep on the altar in the main meditation hall. So now the other senior monks didn't give him a hard time, and the young monks were like, this is outrageous, and they were very upset. And then when they would complain to the senior monks, they'd be all, well, he's also a senior monk, we can't tell him what to do. He got direct teachings from the master. And they were like, this is horrible. So they were all upset about this fact. Okay, now, so this monk was there for 2 years. And then the number one disciple of Master Chin, who was teaching for many years in another land, comes back to the center of the monastery, and he was coming, and everyone's like, wow, this guy's an enlightened master as well, and he's the disciple of this great enlightened master, and they're like, this is amazing. So he comes in with a lot of fanfare and goes into the main hall, and everyone's there, and he comes up to the top, and he's like, I'm a master. And he's like, oh, he's like, where's Master Chin? No, he's meditating in the pagoda. Mm-hmm. So he starts giving a teaching, and everyone's like, oh, wow. And then while he's teaching, he's looking out in the audience. And then the old guy who's the bad monk. The bad monk starts like squawking while he's teaching. He starts making like a bird noise, like squawk, quack, 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 like a duck. Yeah. So of course he notices this guy making duck sounds. So he looks at him and he's like, and then he goes, and then his eyes go big, and then he gets up, walks over, and everyone's all, oh, he's just gonna smack this guy for being so bad, and we knew he was so bad. But then he goes over and he bows, and he goes, Master Chin. He was Master Chin the whole time. He just shaved his head, took off his nice clothes, and joined the monks, and then just gave them a hard time. Because that's what teachers do. Got to do it some way. So he found a way to really test students. He became a troublemaker. But I also got to say, one of my favorite teachings is the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is a great troublemaker. He is a great troublemaker. But troublemakers get you out of the box that you're in. The troublemaker can come into your awareness, and when you see trouble is a koan. A troublemaker should be seen as a teacher, someone who advances you, someone who gives you a lesson. A troublemaker is not against you, but a troublemaker forces you to have a higher awareness. All right. We're going to reach for a higher Dharma in this unprecedented time, very strange time, where we are here in America, the epicenter of the pandemic, with a lot of confusion in our government, disunity in our government. Some people helping, some people hurting, and in a time of great civil unrest. We're in a very, very difficult time where tens of millions of people have lost their jobs. The understanding of the fabric of society is not secure. We're in a very difficult time. It's a time of trouble. A time of trouble and troublemakers, where we have to have a higher awareness and compassion to deal with the trouble and the troublemakers, and not become a troublemaker, but a bringer of light through compassion. So we're going to sit for one song. This is going to be an open eye meditation, light focus on the third eye. This is the Lojong teachings of transforming adverse conditions into the pathway of awakening in dealing with troublemakers. Sit up nice and straight, and let's begin. Wonderful.